What's going on, Coastal? How you guys doing this morning? You guys doing good? Welcome. My name is TJ. I'm one of the pastors here, and we are so glad you're joining with us today. Before we dive in today, can you guys help me welcome everybody that's watching online and everybody at our Lighthouse Point location? Come on, Parkland, let's show them some love. We love you guys. We're so glad you guys are joining with us. And man, I'm excited for week 3 of a series we're calling The Battle. And we've been diving in, talking about how in life there is this battle for one thing and one thing alone. It's the battle for our heart. And there are so many enemies to our heart. And what God is after is he wants to be in first place in our lives. He wants to dominate that position and make sure that he is the ultimate one in our life. But yet there's careers and there's finances and there's all kinds of things in this world that are competing for what is going to be in first place in your life. And so I was thinking about this week. Actually, this week was a lot of reflection for me because 18 years ago, this week, I was actually had coming back from a missions trip. And when I got back from that mission trip, I fell deathly ill to the point where I ended up in the emergency room. They couldn't figure out what was going on with me. They put me actually in isolation because they thought, man, I'd come back from a third world country. They thought I had some sort of weird infectious disease. I was running like 104, 105 degree fever. I couldn't keep anything down. Doctors were actually freaking out so bad, they asked my wife to call in my family because they weren't sure I was actually going to make it. They were giving me spinal taps, just trying to figure out like what was going on, what was attacking my body that was causing all this. And I remember in that moment when you're in a when you feel like it's going to be the end, you have the important things really come to the surface at that point. You know what I'm saying? Like all of a sudden, it didn't matter where I lived or what car I drove. Like all that mattered is like, can I live another day? And I realize that most of us have not had an experience like that, but let me just tell you something. When you have an experience like that, where you're on your deathbed and the doctors have no clue, I literally remember my pastor coming in and them laying hands on me and praying for me. And within 24 hours, miraculously, the doctors still couldn't even explain it. When they discharged me out of the hospital, they said he came in with a fever. They go, we don't know what happened. It makes no sense to us, but God miraculously touched your life. And I'm just telling you that man, like when that happens, all of a sudden you start to look at time. You start to look at life a little bit differently than maybe how you perceived it before and how you looked at it before. And that event got me thinking about time. Anyone else ever think about time in their life? Like how much time is left? How much more can I do in this life? And it really got me looking at my life saying, first of all, where has all the time gone? Come on, somebody. Because time is just like passing like every second. But like how am I also maximizing my time? Like, how am I taking advantage of the time that I have here on this earth? Because here's what I know. We all are given the same amount of time. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. None of us got 25 and the rest of us got 23. No. We're all given the same amount of time. So how are we taking advantage of that? And what are we doing with it? And how fast is it going by? And like, it's just crazy because the speed of our world just seems to get faster and faster and faster. Can anybody agree with that? Like I read this week about how Rocket Mortgage, they cut down the time it took to get a mortgage by using technology and AI to become the #1 mortgage lender in all of America. Did you know that Domino's Pizza became the #1 retailer? First of all, can you believe that Domino's is the #1 pizza retailer in the world? When they decided that they could get a pizza to you in 30 minutes or less. In fact, the CEO of Domino's, when they did this at the time, said, we are not in the pizza business, we are in the delivery business. And if you've ever had a Domino's pizza, you can attest to that. They are definitely in the delivery business. Like, check this out, taking a cue from Domino's, a hospital in Gilbert, Arizona, says that in the emergency room, they guarantee door to dock in 31 minutes or less, or your visit is free. I thought that was pretty awesome. Like, I've just realized in life, we'll pay for anything if it will save us time. Like we'll do fast passes, like we'll use the fast lanes on the internet. It's why we have cell phones, it's why we have DMs, it's why we have all these things that help us get connected faster and faster. In fact, in 1960, the government did a study about how technology would change your life and would change my life for the better. They said in 30 years, which how many of you guys know the government isn't very good at predicting the future. They said in 30 years, people would only be working something like 30 hours a week or 30 weeks a year. A little bit of a failure then. Then in 1963, there was a little food chain that came up with this grand idea that we're gonna serve food not based on the quality of the food or the price, but on the speed of delivery, and we called it fast food. Not good food, not even cheap food, but fast food. But here's the problem with that. You still had to park your car and go inside and order your meal and then take it and go eat it. So they came up with a genius idea called the drive-through so Americans could eat in their car like God intended them to eat. Meyer Friedman says, we suffer from a disease called hurry sickness. He says it's actually a kind of disease and it kills us not just physically, but it kills us spiritually and emotionally. And just to level the playing field here today, whether you're in Lighthouse Point, watching online right here in Parkland, I just wanna do a mass confessional with us all. So if you suffer from hurry sickness, I want you to raise your hands here. And no, not yet. That's the problem. See, some of y'all, I didn't even get to where I wanted to go yet, and y'all like, yeah, that's me. Like, you don't even know that that's you. I wanna give you some parameters to help you know if that's you, okay? We're all gonna do it together, so hold your horses, okay? You're here for an hour and 3 minutes, okay? Okay, good. So if you say to yourself, there are just not enough hours in the day, if you come to an intersection and you analyze the year, make, and model of every car that's in front of you, and based on that, you decide which lane you're gonna choose that's gonna go fastest. If you're a woman, you do this all while putting on full facial makeup. I don't know how you do that. Like maybe for you, when you're at the grocery store getting to the checkout counter, what you do is you analyze the people that are in the different lines, you count how many items are in their baskets, and you choose your lane based on that. And then if you're really sick, what you do is you keep track of where you would have been in a different line had you chosen that line. And if they get through first, you're angry for the rest of the day. Now, if you fall into one of those categories, raise your hands. Now, okay, quite a few of us. Okay, I'm talking to the right church. I just want to make sure. Lighthouse Point, I'm sure you all are the same, but I read this survey this week that said if people could have one more hour to do anything in their lives, what would they do? You know what the number one answer was? Sleep. Not dream, not spend more time with my family. Their number one answer was, I wanna take a nap. Like, we are a tired society. And it's not that we're a tired society, it's that we're missing out on what's most important in life. And Jesus talked about this very thing in Luke chapter 12. And I love how Jesus would communicate timeless truths through incredible stories. And today, if it's okay with you, and I don't do this very often, I would love to put a modern twist on an ancient story that I think would be a little bit more relatable to you and I today, in the day and in the age that we live in. And here's the deal, the scripture is there in the notes, so you can go like, man, he's way off. But I want you to see from the story what I'm talking about. And so let me just tell it in today's vernacular. There was a man, he was a venture capitalist, an entrepreneur who was well-educated. He had an MBA from Harvard. He often worked 12 to 14 hours a day and sometimes weekends. He joined professional organizations. He was in Vistage. He was in them all. And so he could network with other people. He served on boards of directors so he could be in the same rooms as other like-minded professionals. He often was listening to leadership podcasts and reading Tony Robbins books and John Maxwell books, keeping up with the cutting edge of leadership and his industry. And even when he was not at work, his mind was on his work. So not only was it his occupation, but it was also his preoccupation. He found that a 40-hour work week simply was not enough, and so most weeks he just doubled it. His wife would try to remind him that he had a family and that he needed to spend time with them. The problem is that they always wanted some of his time, and that was the one thing he could not give up to them. And from time to time, his kids would complain that they weren't having the opportunity to play catch together. They weren't reading books together. They weren't having lunches together. And they just didn't understand, he would say. He would tell them, I'll be available to them in about 6 months or so when things settle down. Besides, he would say to himself, everything I'm doing is for them, the cars, the houses, the clothes, the bank accounts. It's all for my family. Anyways, can't they see that this is for them? And then about one evening at 1 a.m., he felt a twinge in his chest. And he went to the hospital the next day to get it checked out, and come to find out he had had a mild stroke. And the doctor said to him, hey, you're gonna have to change your lifestyle. You're gonna have to get your eating habits in order. You're gonna have to get some exercise. You're gonna have to monitor your lifestyle and get on an exercise routine. And he did for a time. He had the latest of all the gadgets. He had the Whoop, and he had the cholesterol readers, and he had the body fat calculators all at his home. In fact, if you want to know how to study your body fat, Ken Davis actually writes it like this. He says, if you want to know your body fat content, I've developed a method that won't cost you a cent. Next time you get out of the shower, grab a stopwatch and stand in a full-length mirror and naked and hit the stopwatch and stomp your foot as hard as you can. When stuff stops jiggling, click the stopwatch stop. He says, I'm down to 2 days, 36 hours, and 12 minutes. But after he started to get things back in order, he reverted right back to his old ways. Isn't that just like us? And said, when things settle down, I'll worry about my health then. He realized his life was a little out of balance. He often thought about his walk with God and what that would look like. In fact, his church was right down the block from his home, but he would say to himself, when things settle down, I'll have time for that. I know it's a priority, but as a Christian, I don't have to go to church to worship God. I can worship God in my home. And he knew the value of community and generosity, but he said to himself, in 6 months or so, when things settle down, I'll get to that. Then the COO of his company came to him and said that business was at an all-time high. They were booming. They had more orders than they could ever handle. And all of a sudden, they were on the verge of really making it huge in their industry. The problem was that their systems and structures would not be able to handle the growth of what they were having. They needed new warehousing and more procedures and more staff for the upcoming boom. This would be an entire system overhaul for the company. And from that moment on, this was a man who was possessed. He was possessed because he knew exactly what he would do. He would take his company through a technological revolution. He would bring in AI and go paperless and global and digital and wireless. And pretty soon they would be bringing the IPO before Wall Street. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, and he absolutely went for it. This was everything that he wanted, and his company was revolutionizing the tech industry. They were on the leading edge of technology. He was now available to everyone in the world except for those who needed him most: his family and his friends and his God. And he said to his wife that night, do you know what this means? In 6 months from now, we will be set. We won't have any financial burdens. We're gonna be taken care of for life. He goes, man, I know the markets. I've covered every single base. I know exactly how this is going to play out. We can finally take the vacation we've been putting off. And she had heard it all before. Before long, it was 11 p.m. and she said to him, I'm going to bed. Are you coming with me? And he said, man, I've just got a few more things to take care of here on my computer. I'll be up in a little while. And she went to sleep. She woke at 3 a.m. and he was still not in bed. She thought to herself, what in the world is going on? So she decided to go downstairs, and as she came downstairs, she saw that he was lying face down in front of his laptop, and she thought to himself, man, just like a little kid, he'd rather fall asleep down here working than do the thing to come up to bed. And as she called his name, there was no response. And as she touched his cold skin, she realized that he was not breathing. Immediately, she dialed 911. And by the time the paramedics got there, they had discovered that he had died from a heart attack hours earlier. And when the news hit the financial markets, the markets were devastated. Forbes and Wall Street Journal wrote how great his leadership was and how he was such an innovator of technology and how successful he was and how he had changed the game. And at his funeral, the entire community showed up to pay tribute to this outstanding businessman. And as people filed by the casket, they said the same stupid things that people say at funerals, like, he looks so peaceful. Rigor mortis will do that to a person. Or I wonder how much he left. He left it all. And one by one, people stood up and they eulogized him and talked about his accomplishments. He was a leading entrepreneur of the day. He was an innovator of technologies and systems. He was a man of principle. He wouldn't lie or cheat or steal. He was a pillar of the community, another would say. And they got a large marble memorial, and on them they wrote words like innovator, visionary, entrepreneur, leader, and his favorite word of all, success. And when all the crowds and all the people had left, and it was silent and still, an angel of the Lord came down and etched into the stone one word: fool. Fool. It says in Luke chapter 12, verse 20 and 21, but God said to him, you fool, this very night your soul is required of you. And now who will own what you have prepared? So is the man who stores up treasures for himself and is not rich towards God. Some pretty harsh words from Jesus. You actually very seldom see Jesus use terminology like this when referring to people. But like, what was the one scenario that this man forgot to calculate? That he was gonna die. That there is an end date, and there is an end date for every single one of us. And I feel like so many of us, we are so busy building our kingdom that we forget about God's kingdom. And we're so busy trying to build and make a living that we forget to actually build a life that impacts more than just me, myself, and I. And I think that there were two illusions in this man's life. And I think there's two illusions that he believed, and I think it's two illusions that you and I have a tendency to believe in life. The first is this, is we have the tendency to believe when things settle down. When things settle down. And let me ask you a question, when do things settle down? When you die. Things settle way down, like to a stop when you die. And I've just come to the conclusion that we have to ruthlessly eliminate hurry from our lives. It is the great enemy to our spiritual growth. Like, as you look at the life of Jesus, the one thing you'll notice about Jesus is Jesus was very busy. I'm not saying you can't be busy, but there is a difference between being busy and being hurried. See, busy is an external condition of the body, where hurry is an inward condition of your soul. A lot of us, we are busy in life with things and tasks, but a lot of us, it isn't that we're busy outside, it's that we're in a hurry on the inside. We're trying to get places that are damaging and ruining the very heart of who we are, which is the greatest enemy to our life. And it's the battle that every single one of us face every day, is that if the enemy can't get you off focus, here's what he's gonna do. He's gonna hurry your soul. And here's what I've learned about hurry. You can't love in a hurry. You can't be kind in a hurry. You can't receive love in a hurry. Man, you can't build relationships in a hurry. And we have got to learn how to ruthlessly eliminate the hurriness from our life. Here's the second illusion that he believed, that someday more will be enough. He thought, if I just have more, and we talked about this in week 1, it's the spirit of mammon. It's always telling us, if I just have a little bit more. Why? Because the spirit of mammon will constantly tell you and I that it can give us things that only God can provide. And God's trying to get us to go, no, someday more will not be enough. And today, just think about it. We have more choices, more experiences, more stuff, and when has more ever been enough for us? Seriously. We have more shiny things than we've ever had, and we're still not satisfied. Like, when has more ever led to contentment? In fact, the Apostle Paul said it like this in Philippians chapter 4, verse 11 through 13. He says, I'm not saying this because I'm in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. In other words, he's telling us that we have to teach ourselves contentment. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. And this is everybody's favorite verse to misquote, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. What's the context of that? The context of that is you can learn how to be content. That's the context isn't God wants to give you more stuff. The context is God goes, hey, here's what I want to do. I want to teach you how more is never going to be enough, that I'm going to be enough for you. The secret to being content is realizing that your value and your worth isn't going to come from those things. Your value and your worth is going to come from your Creator, who's going to establish that inside of your heart and soul. But if you're always in a hurry for the next thing, you're gonna miss out on discovering who God actually wants you to be, that you're not the value of the things you have, you're the value of how He created you. And He wants you to discover that in your life because it will change everything about your life. But it is a learned behavior. It is a discipline. I know that's the word that nobody likes. It's why Paul would say things like, I beat my body and make it my slave. Why? Because my flesh wants more. And I've got to beat that back and learn how to be content with what God has already provided. I read this story about Snoopy. I don't know why I was reading weird stories this week. It says, once he tried to be thankful on Thanksgiving, and he got dog food for his Thanksgiving Day dinner. How many of y'all know that that's a bad Thanksgiving? Dog food on Thanksgiving. Because he was aware that everybody else was eating turkey on Thanksgiving. And he meditated and he said to himself, how about that? Everyone else is eating turkey today, and just because I'm a dog, I get dog food. He sulked and he positioned himself on top of his dog house, but soon he concluded, of course, it could have been worse, and I want you to remember that line, it could have been worse. He said, I could have been born a turkey. Sometimes we gotta have a perspective shift. But I want you to remember, it could have been worse. As you're leaving today, getting into your car, you're gonna have a tendency to want a newer, bigger, faster, more relevant vehicle. And here's what I want you to say with great conviction and passion, it could have been worse. Man, when you get home and pull into your garage at your house, your apartment, condo, trailer, wherever you live, instead of thinking, I wish I had a bigger, newer, cleaner home, here's what you're gonna say with great passion, it could have been worse. As you wake up in the morning and you roll over and you look at your spouse, you're gonna say to yourself with great compassion and big conviction, it could have been worse. Don't do that, that's probably bad. But it's a perspective shift. It's learning how to be content in life. Got me thinking about when I was growing up, I spent a lot of time, my parents got divorced, and when they were in the middle of their separation, I went and lived at my grandparents' house. And the one thing I loved about living at my grandparents' house is my great-grandmother and grandfather lived there as well. They were these little old Italian people, and my great-grandmother's name was Mimi. And the thing that I loved about Mimi is Mimi loved to play games with me. Like, I don't know about you, but when you're a kid, man, somebody that will play some games, we play card games, but one of her favorite games was the game Monopoly. Anybody remember Monopoly? You know, I read on here today, it says a fast-dealing property game. Last time I played this, it took 4 hours. This is nothing fast about this game. But I remember playing Monopoly with my grandmother, my great-grandmother, Mimi. Mimi taught me so many things in life in a really unique and odd way, but like she was one of those people that she didn't play Monopoly for fun, she played to win. Like she was ruthless to her great-grandson. Like she's one of those people that was like a combination of like Donald Trump and Martha Stewart if they had a kid. And I remember we'd sit down and she'd hand out that $1,500 and I'd think to myself at 7 years old, like I'm rich, I got $1,500. And I didn't understand how to play the game. And so I was super methodical about how I would spend my money. My great-grandmother, Mimi, she was not everything she landed on, she bought. She bought like everything she landed on, and before long, when she ran out of money, she started mortgaging her properties to buy more properties. And eventually she would get me on the run because she would own everything on the board and have built houses and hotels and was charging me at every single state of the game. And eventually she would take my last dollar and she would look at me and she would say, TJ, someday you're gonna learn how to play the game. Someday you're gonna learn how to play the game. And I remember over those next couple of summers that I would go home and I had a stepbrother and I had a neighbor named Jason, and we would wake up around 10 a.m., watch The Price is Right, and play Monopoly. And over those summers, I learned how to play the game. I learned how to be shrewd, and I learned how to be ruthless. I learned how to even cut a few corners if I needed to win the game. And I remember going to visit my grandparents for the holidays and thinking to myself, man, my grandmother is going to get it this time. I remember sitting down with her and I was ready for her, and she was not ready for me. The boy that she knew was now a man. He was ready to come. And slowly and methodically, I bought everything up off the board. I had my grandmother on the run. She was going down. I remember exactly where it happened. It happened at Marvin Gardens, where I took her last dollar. I'd finally broken her financially, psychologically. I was now master of the board. And my grandmother, Mimi, in all of her wisdom, would teach me one more lesson. It's probably one of the best lessons I was ever taught. And James Dobson actually coined it. She says, now that the game is over, it all goes back in the box. It all goes back in here. And I don't know about you, but I didn't want it to go back in the box. I thought we should bronze it, memorialize the victory that I had, and we should celebrate it for the next 25 years. And it was at that point that she had told me, many had played the game before us, and many will play the game after us. But when the game is over, it all goes back in the box. All the things we're striving for, all the things that we're pursuing, they end. And when it's over, it's over. This man in the story that Jesus tells, he was a shrewd man. Let's be honest, he learned how to play the game, and he played the game well. Nothing wrong with playing the game well. I think you actually do a disservice to God if you don't play the game well. He just forgot one thing, that this game ends. And how you played this game on this earth determines how you play the next game in heaven. The houses, the cars, the titles, the clothes, the filled barns and the aging portfolios. The stuff that we worry so much about and we think that matters most. Most of that stuff has an ROI, it has a return on investment here on this earth. But does it have an EROI, an eternal return on investment? And in this story, he says the goal isn't to be rich on this earth, it's to be rich towards God. So what does that actually mean? And what does that look like? Because here's the deal, God isn't knocking us for being successful here on this earth. But if all we're using that for is for me, myself, and I, and we're not discovering how to be rich towards God on this earth, then we're missing out on what matters most. And this is what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 22. I think he gives us the way It says, teacher asked, which is the greatest commandment in the law? And Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commands. And I just have two things for us here today. Jesus simply tells us, number one, love God. Love God. Like, where is God in your life? The problem for most of us, and this is kind of the heart of this message, the problem for most of us isn't the pace of our life, it's the priority of our life. Because all of us, the pace does not matter, it's the priority in which you pace your life. And so what is the priority in your life? Is God your ultimate? Like, is he the number one? Like, is he filling the void that we all need him to fill? And what is loving God? What does actually loving God look like? Is it just like, oh, I worship? No. Here's what it is. John chapter 14, verse 15. This is what Jesus says. He says, if you really love me, you will keep and obey my commands. In other words, the stuff that I wrote in here, you'll actually do those things. Now, we don't like that very much because we want to display love the way we want to display it. The problem is that how I give love and how my wife receives love are totally different things. And a lot of us, we're trying to give God love a certain way. Well, this is how I love you. And God's going, that's not how I receive love. Love is not sacrifice. Love is obedience. And a lot of us, we're thinking, well, I'm sacrificial. Well, God's not looking for sacrifice, he's looking for obedience. Sacrifice might become obedience. It might cost you something, but he's looking for obedience. He's looking, will you do what I tell you to do? Now, we don't like that because we're an independent people. No, nobody's gonna tell me what to do. If you have surrendered your life to Jesus, yes, he does. That's the key. If you're not surrendered, you won't. You won't be obedient to God. You're like, Pastor, that's kind of harsh. Jesus was pretty harsh in this story. He's telling us we're foolish to think otherwise. But he tells us the key to life is to love him. How do we love him? We love him with our time. Where is God in your time? Is he first? That's why Matthew 6:33, seek first the kingdom of God. Not your kingdom, the kingdom of God. And his righteousness, being in right standing with him. How are you in right standing with God? When you're obedient to him. And then all the things that we're looking for in life, he adds to us, but it's only after we've been obedient or in right standing with him that he goes, I can actually trust you with those things. How about with our talent? What are the gifts and talents that God's given you? Are you being a good steward of them? The thing about this story is this guy was actually a good steward of his talents. He maximized them. There's nothing wrong with it. That's the beautiful part of the story is he maximized them. He just thought all of his talent was for him. And so many of us, we think all of my talent is for me. No. You were actually created to do things for God. I don't know if you've realized that or not. It's not just for you. That's why in Ephesians chapter 2:10, it says, for we are God's handiwork, like he created us in Christ Jesus. What? To do good works, which he prepared in advance for you to do. See, it's not all about you. It's actually all about God. And he wants to utilize the gifts and talents that he's put in your life to glorify him on this earth. That you would be his handiwork, that you would be his masterpiece. Another version said you're a masterpiece. What does that mean? It means people can look at that and go, man, I see the creator in that. I see the beauty in that. I see the Lord of, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords in that person's life because they are glorifying and exemplifying God, not just in some of their life, not just in their speech, but in their actions and in their life. And it's about your treasure. It's about the things, heart, soul, and mind. He's like, man, here's what it is. It's about your treasure. And we talked about this last week. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Why? Because he wants your heart. And what is your heart connected to? Is following your treasure. He's saying, man, you love me. These things are gonna be exemplified in your life. You're gonna be able to see your obedience through these things. It is gonna be an indication that you love me. Like my wife, here's what I've learned about marriage. My wife doesn't want me just to tell her I love her. She wants me to show her I love her. Like when we were dating, I would tell her I loved her. It didn't mean much, but when I put a ring on her finger and said, I'm committed to you with everything I have, it changed the game. And God's going, man, I'm looking for some people that will stop dating me and start marrying me and get committed to following my ways and going after me with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength. Stop playing Christianity and be a Christian, which means I'm gonna be like Christ. Man, it's not enough just to come here on a Sunday and sing a couple of songs and hear a message and fill in some blanks. No. It's, are we gonna live this out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and Saturday? Like, is it gonna be exemplified in our life? When we're at work, when we're with our kids afterwards, when we're going through the drive-through and the person on the other end gives us the wrong order. Like, are we gonna show grace and mercy and love and kindness in those moments, or are we gonna lash out and be like, you idiot, I can't? No, they're people. And he said the second command is like it. Number 2, he said love people. Love your neighbor as yourself. We live in a day and an age where we are all about self-love right now. And it's actually countercultural to what the Bible says. The Bible says you are to die to yourself. Why do you die to yourself? So you can actually love somebody else. Because it's hard for me to love you when I'm just loving me. And way too many of us are too self-focused rather than others-focused. I'm not saying you shouldn't love yourself. Like, I love me. But loving me can't be the ultimate. Putting me first can't be the ultimate. Jesus said, pick up your cross and carry it daily. Why? Because there are things that I need to crucify, mostly just me. My pride, my ego, my flesh, my desire to be wanted and liked and loved and cared for. Because when I die to those things, I can go, man, I can focus on some other people. 1 John 4:11 says, my dear friends, if God loved us like this, laying down his life is what he's talking about, we certainly ought to love each other. No one has seen God ever, but if we love one another, God dwells deeply within us and his love becomes complete in us, perfect love. I keep reading this quote over and over again. It's kind of rocked me. It says, in the West, I don't know who wrote it or who said it. It says, in the West, you measure your wealth by your possessions. But in the East, we measure our wealth by our friends. And God's going, man, we think that our wealth is based on our barns and how much we store up, and our wealth is based on the people that we impact and the lives that are around us. And I think so many of us in this life are seeking what is temporary instead of what is eternal. All the stuff, the houses, the cars, the properties, the 401ks, the retirements, the cryptocurrencies, the next deal, not bad things. They're just not eternal things. And we invest all of our time, our effort, our emotions, our lives into those things, and we forget that all those things, they fade away because they're temporary. And if we don't live for the things that are eternal, all we'll live for is the temporary. And we'll end up with temporary satisfaction, temporary meaning, temporary fulfillment, and all that will come to an end. But ideally, you never will. See, in this room, there's one thing and one thing only that is not temporary. And it's the one thing that you can bring to heaven with you from this earth. And it's people. The houses, the cars, the career will fade away. But the people you impact, the lives you win to Christ, they get to come with you. And so the question becomes, what should we be living for? One of my favorite quotes is by Sir Winston Churchill. He says, we make a living by what we get and a life by what we give. What are you giving in life? How are you living your life? Are you living it with a posture of like, what can I get? Or what can I give? And I've just learned that wise people build their lives around what is eternal and squeeze in what is temporary. And I just think, church, we've got to arrange our lives around what matters most. And what matters most is people. The rest of it, it just goes back in the box. Just goes back in the box. And here's the thing, as we focus on people, here's what I know, is the box will wait. Would you guys bow your heads and pray with me? God, we just come before you. And my prayer today is that we would just evaluate our lives and ask ourselves, man, what are we living for? God, would you speak to us? What are we living for? Are we living for the temporary or are we living for the eternal? Are we living with the someday more will be enough mentality or when things settle down mentality, or are we living in the moment and living in today? Because what you want most is for us to love you with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and then to love others. But God, here's what I know. Maybe there's some of you here that you're hearing all that and you've never experienced a God that actually loves you with an everlasting love. In fact, you're not here by accident or happenstance. You're actually here on purpose. In fact, God has been seeking and searching you out because he wants to have an encounter with you. He wants to change your world from the inside out. And it begins with a heart change before it ever happens to be a life change. Because God is an inside out God. And he loved you so much that he saw you in the middle of the mess that you're in right now, the middle of the circumstances that you're in. And he said, man, I've got a way to get you out of that. And it's through the gift of my son, Jesus Christ, who came to this earth 2,000 years ago because he knew you would be in a mess. And he's like, I'm on a search and rescue mission for you. And he lived a perfect life, the life that you and I could not attain, and died a sinner's death, the death that you and I deserve. So we could experience salvation because he died and rose again 3 days later, defeating death, hell, and the grave, the problem, the thing that you're up against right now, so that you could experience an abundant life, a life with your Creator. And maybe you're out there today and you need to experience a fresh start, a new life, a new beginning in Jesus. And so with every head bowed and every eye closed, if that's you here today, if you just slip your hand up on the count of three, I'd love to pray a simple yet significant prayer with you that changes everything for everyone. If that's you. 1, 2, 3. Go ahead and raise those hands. Yes, I see you. I see you. Thank you. I see you back there. Thank you. Yes, ma'am, I see you. Who else? Yes, I see you. Thank you. I see you over there in the corner. I see you in the corner. I see you. Yes, I see you right there. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. All the way in the back, I see you. Thank you. Anybody else? If you'll pray this prayer in your heart as I prayed out loud, say, God, Thank you for loving me and seeing me in the middle of my mess and sending your son, Jesus. Jesus, I ask you to come into my heart and take over my life. I surrender my will and my way to your lordship. I ask you to forgive me of my past, change my present, and secure my future. Thank you for loving me and saving me. God, would you give me a fresh start today and a new beginning? Fill me with your power and your presence. Help to lead, God, and direct my life. It's in Jesus' name that I pray. And everybody said,